What's going on, guys? In today's video I wanted to talk to you about something that I've recently discovered that has been huge for my life, and I think it will be huge for your life as well. And that is the realization of just how much guilt was driving my life and had been driving my life for as long as I can remember. And when I refer to guilt, I don't mean just feeling like guilty about something. I also mean the feeling of like unworthiness, which also goes along with guilt. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video for you guys is because recently, through a book I read called Letting Go, I really realized that guilt had been the driving factor for just about all the decisions I was making in my life. For example, when I was like 15, 16 years old and I started working out seriously, my primary motivation for working out was the fact that I thought that I wasn't good enough to have any girls in my life if I didn't have a great body. Forget the fact that guys with bad bodies were getting girls. That's what I felt. It was my own unworthiness feeling. But here's the funny thing that happened is I got the great body. I had a better body than just about anybody. And the guilt feeling didn't go away. The guilt feeling just transitioned to the next thing. It was like, well, now you need all this money, or you need this kind of car, or you need to have this much game, or you need to be able to drink this much at parties, or have this cool picture on social media. It's just like the guilt feeling transitioned. And if you'll notice here, it's basically about the fact that you're not good enough until you get something outside of yourself, but there never is that one thing outside of yourself that ever satisfies the guilt. Now, this applies to basically every area of your life, and like I said, this really drives, I think most people are driven by guilt, and our society tends to kind of promote that feeling, but I'll explain here in a little bit why that's not a good idea and a better solution for you. But I mean, this drives people in all kinds of areas. A lot of guys who are into fitness are very deeply insecure, and they'll take steroids and they'll talk about how, like, if I just get 22-inch arms or a 400-pound bench, I'll finally have that feeling. I'll finally feel like I got what I was after. Or somebody who's really into money, who feels like they're insecure until they have the amount of money. They'll be like, well, if I just get $1 million, then I'll finally feel like I've made it. I'll feel worthy. I'll feel good enough for X, whatever X is that they're looking for, maybe love, whatever it is. They finally feel like once I get this thing outside of me, I'll finally feel good enough. If you'll notice, guys, like, we are completely pursuing things in our lives to fill that void within ourselves, essentially, to fill that feeling that we aren't good enough, that something outside of us has to fix us. And it's just not a healthy process, and the reason being is because we just latch on to the next thing that tells us that, well, you're not good enough until you get this. This is the whole advertising industry, but it just drives people completely. They put off their happiness, they put off the things they want. I'm talking about me in particular here as well. Like, you put off all these like positive things that you want in your life, the positive feelings, the great relationship, or just the happiness in your life, because you feel guilty because you haven't gotten this thing outside of yourself. Another example from my life is I went on a cruise, and I was on the cruise ship. I think it was like the second day of the trip, and I wasn't even enjoying the trip because I felt guilty that I hadn't earned enough money to deserve to be happy in that moment. So I spent the whole day fighting off this feeling of guilt and trying to like suppress it down in myself so I could just relax. So I just sat there on the boat and drank and felt bad for myself. And it's just like guilt driving every decision. And then it's like you feel guilty like when you're not successful, and then you feel guilty when you are successful that you should be doing better. Like, for example, with me, another one, it's like YouTube. I didn't make YouTube out of guilt. I didn't feel guilty and feel like, gee, I need to make a YouTube. I'd made YouTube because this is something that I really wanted to do for a long time, and I enjoy putting out this content. But even within that, there's the guilt of like, gee, your videos should be better. You should be talking better. You should have more, like, you should speak clearer. Your videos should be longer. Your videos should be shorter. You should post them at a different time. Your thumbnail could be better. You should have more subscribers already. Why aren't you making more money off this channel? It's like just constantly just like barking in your ear, this guilt that just torments like your entire life. It's like we spend our lives being afraid to die, and then in the middle, the part where we're actually alive, we feel guilty for our lives because we're not doing what we think we should be doing with them. And it's just a never-ending cycle, because guilt isn't like about doing something to prove our worthiness. Guilt is just indefinite. It will always be telling you that you're not good enough. Now, guys, I spoke on a video recently. I talked about how your biggest need as a human being is to conform with your inner identity. So if your inner identity is driven by guilt and unworthiness, you're feeling like you're not worth something, then you're subconsciously going to bring that about. Guilt has a way of bringing about what it is you feel guilty for. So like a lot of people, this has been proven out psychologically psychologically, but a lot of people, if they injure themselves or they're very clumsy and things like that, it has to do with a feeling of like guilt on the inside. Like a lot of people, there's like been studies shown about people who tend to like have like knife fetishes or things like that. They have a lot of guilt within themselves, and this is manifesting itself subconsciously. They don't really realize they're doing it. And so we always see this thing, like perhaps you get ahead in life. Maybe you talk to a girl that you think is better than you, like, oh, she's more attractive than me, I'm so lucky here, and you start feeling like unworthy for it, and suddenly that unworthiness keeps manifesting. And there's always like a logical explanation for why it happened. It's like, well, X, Y, and Z happened, and therefore the relationship blew up. But if you really look at the bottom line, is you had this feeling like you weren't worth it from the beginning, and now you are back in that stable place that your body expects to be, where you don't have the thing that you think's outside of yourself. A good example from my life is not too long ago, I got a job that was just perfect for what I wanted. It has the great hours, opportunity to really make a lot of money, and it's like the moment I got it, I felt guilty that I had it. I was like, it's like I'd wanted it, I was so happy I had it, and then suddenly I'm like, gee, like I don't deserve this. It's like, this isn't me, this isn't right, why am I doing well, why should I have this? And it's like it's like my guilty conscience was telling me I hadn't suffered enough for this, and I didn't have a college degree, so I didn't deserve it, and I hadn't put in enough agony to deserve this job. This is why you'll hear like successful people, they're always talking about how they had to suffer to get where they're at. You don't understand the struggle, like Gary Vee and all these kind of people talking about like how they just grinded and you just gotta eat shit for years. It's they're constantly trying to prove to you that they're worth it and they're deserving of their success because they low-key feel guilty about it. So anyways, guys, I got this job and I immediately felt guilty about it, and it's like a weight was on my chest. Like I had to force myself with all of my being to even take action on the job. This is before I knew about this guilt thing and knew how to get rid of it. But anyway, so I had the job and I could not it was so hard to get myself to take any action, and every time I'd take a step forward, it's like just a mountain of shit would get thrown in my face from like the guy I was working with, just something wouldn't work out, this other person would bail, there was a problem with the money, the listing wouldn't work out, it was in real estate, the listing wouldn't work out, or this person we were trying to bring onto our team would fall through, like everything would just fall through the whole time. And then ended up like I didn't get fired, but we kind of had to disband the team. And so I was just sitting here like, this makes no sense, like I don't understand, like this job came into my life, I was so happy about it, and then I realized like I had just returned back to the state that my body was comfortable with now that I didn't have this job I was working. And once I read this book and realized this, I was like, oh my God, like this has been driving so much of my life. And I'm talking about me a lot in this video, but I know this, you can relate this to your life, I'm sure, if you really think about it. Basically what happened with this job is I just felt like I wasn't worth having the job, therefore that inner like conformity needed to be like, I needed to go back into balance in like my self-identity. So my unconscious, my subconscious brought about the happenings that led to me not having the job anymore. And so really what you got to do with it when it comes to this guilt and this unworthiness is you're going to have to change your inner identity, and that starts by letting go of the guilt. You see, guys, one thing that's funny is we never ask ourselves why we feel like we got to go get something outside of ourselves anyways. It really doesn't make any sense. I don't want to sound like one of these people like, you're perfect, like, oh, completely perfect on the inside and out, all that cliche stuff. I mean, but honestly, like, you're born perfect, and I don't mean born perfect that you don't have to do anything with your life. You really don't have, I just want you to take the have out of the idea, because the have is the guilty part. Instead of feeling like you have to do something, do it out of the joy of doing it. Because to be perfect doesn't mean like we have this conception that the reason we're taking action is to prove our worthiness in the world. What if you already felt worthy, and through that worthiness you just did the things you wanted to do with your life, and you took action, you got the job you wanted, not because you felt bad if you weren't employed, but because you loved the job you had, and you were having the impact in the world you wanted to have, not because you felt like you were obligated to do something with your life, but because you truly just loved what you were doing. That's a major paradigm shift, but it has a huge impact on the way you feel in your life, and allows you to already feel good in yourself and just move towards the next positive thing in your life, rather than constantly with that carrot dangling in front of yourself, chasing the next feeling to try and make yourself feel like you're worth like living. So what I'm doing, guys, to let go of this guilt is just simply recognizing how much it's having an impact on my life. It's like if I talk to a girl I think's out of my league, the guilt comes in, it's like you're not worthy, and it's like you start acting weird. Or perhaps a good opportunity comes in my life and all of a sudden I'm like, nah, that's not for you, it couldn't work out, why could that work out, right? It's like taking that quantum leap outside of you, like the self-identity, requires letting go of the guilt that's in the way, right? Letting go of that unworthiness in the way. So what really works, and it's honestly, it's easy and hard at the same time, this process. And what I mean by that is anybody can do it. You don't have to go really trained to do it, but it requires a lot of commitment to actually make it happen, because you got to be aware. And by watching this video, you are probably already significantly more aware of any guilt you were feeling that was affecting any area of your life, but now you got to implement it. So what I'm doing and what I'm recommending to you to do is notice when guilt is driving your actions. Notice when you're trying to perhaps get somebody's approval because you don't feel like you're good enough for them, or notice how perhaps you are avoiding something that you feel like is too good for you, or whatever it is, or you're constant, I need to go get this thing because I don't feel good right now. Like all those feelings, start noticing them, and notice how those thoughts and actions that are being driven by the feeling of guilt, and then let the feeling of guilt go. You don't have to get angry at it. In fact, don't get angry at it, or you're just going to resist it and you're going to get in a fight with it. Just notice that it's there. And once you notice that it's there, it'll start to dissipate. I've been actually really practicing this because I want to get rid of a lot of it, because it can take a lot of time. And I've been kind of letting this feeling of guilt kind of run in my body for like a day or so now. And it's honestly, it's kind of uncomfortable, but I'm just trying to wear it out of my body because there's just so much guilt around different areas. So like I said, guys, this is going to take time. You're not going to get it all out of the way immediately. But I mean, if there's something that's really been plaguing you with it and you start to notice it and you just choose to let that feeling of guilt go and to just accept that you're good enough already as it is, you will notice a pretty big relief very quickly in that specific area. And over time, you'll be able to let the guilt go in other areas of your life. But it's just really a process of being aware of when this is happening. And one thing you really need to expect of this is you're going to be angry and sad, honestly, when you start to do this practice. It's really like I was sitting here working on this guilty feeling in myself and just noticing how much of my life had been driven by that guilt. And it's like I had to, like, I was just really, like, upset. Like, I was very, like, it was like feeling grief, basically, about it, because it's just all the opportunities in my life that had been blown or missed or whatever because of this feeling like I wasn't good enough already as it is. You'll also perhaps feel angry. You'll be like, why do I even have this feeling in my body? This is ridiculous. Why would I feel this way? And you just have to kind of forgive it. I can't really give you a great reason why it's there, but you just got to forgive the fact that it's there and just let it go. Forgive yourself for feeling that way, because it doesn't do you any good. In fact, you're just adding more guilt if you're guilty about feeling guilty. So that's not helpful. Just forgive the feeling and just let it go. Now, what you can expect as you transcend the guilt and you let it go is what you're going to need to do is, rather than be driven by this feeling of guilt and like I need to do something because otherwise I don't feel like I'm worthy of living, basically, instead of that feeling, you're going to be driven by like, I love me, I love my life, what do I want to do with my life? And so now it's about creating a compelling vision for your future and the things that really inspire you, and taking action through joy rather than guilt. And joy will replace the guilt over time as you let the guilt go. Guys, I think this is getting into be quite a long video, but just take that practice I just gave you, let the guilt go, and you'll find that just joy starts to fill it up. As long as you have a vision and a direction you're headed in, you're going to find that oftentimes the thing you're aiming for you feel guilty about. It's like, why would I, like, especially if it's something out of the normal, you'll be like, why am I aiming for something out of the normal? It's guilt again. Let the guilt go, enjoy the journey, and just have joy and like be inspired rather than driven from behind out of fear and guilt. And it's a big paradigm shift, but it just makes your life significantly better, and you start doing things that are more important to you rather than trying to please other people as well. Guys, that's all I got for this one. If you got something out of this video, be sure to hit the like button so I can reach more guys through the algorithm. Hit the bell icon and subscribe button so you don't miss tomorrow's video, and I'll talk to you later.